Awesome. Hey, thank you guys for having me out so much, and what a nice introduction. I'd like to think that it was serendipitous that I was up here, but the truth is I was like begging Chris to come back. I was like, come on, man. You know, last time I talked was like, here was 2013, right? It was one of the first talks I ever gave, and I was like, I've been out there on the road doing this for so long. Let me come back and actually not suck. So here's hoping that I don't. So I'll go ahead and do a cliche thing and put the definition up of serendipity, right? And we don't have to read it, but I think the point I want to make here is that serendipity almost feels like a magical word, like it's a magical thing, you know, like there's something about it that is out of our control and it just happens. And I kind of want to, I mean, I believe in magic, like so much, but I also believe in the power of your magic and decision and saying yes and actually doing the work. So I would say that, for something to be serendipitous, for it to happen, you have to say yes and you have to do the work, right? It just doesn't happen. Magic just doesn't happen on its own. You're an active partner in that. So I want to, tell you a little bit of where we came from and how Mama Sauce came to be, and it's just full of serendipitous things and a confluence of people and the city and everything else. So how we got here, from here, which is me. So Mama Sauce is a product of me and many other people. The founding three people that all came together being Italian Americans, hence the name Mama Sauce. But there's a lot more, I think, to that story. Redundant slide. And not just, Mama Sauce being Italian, but like I said, the city itself. So I'm in Winter Park. This is a 4-color letterpress print, which what we do is letterpress printing and screen print printing. I'll tell you a little bit more about that. But a lot of it has to do with our community, right? So I said it takes saying yes, it takes doing the work, but I also think serendipity takes people and community. And when we started now, it'll be 10 years for us doing what we do in October. And we didn't start alone, right? Fiction started 1 week. I looked at the records on some days. 1 week apart from us, we registered as companies Fiction, right? Maven, Purple Rock Scissors, Rifle Paper Company. These companies, we were a community. So I think that for our story, which I think has a lot of these things, involves a lot of people. So before we get into telling you a little bit about our story, I think Mama Sauce just sounds like something that maybe it's not. Like, I don't know, maybe we make pizzas or something else, but what we actually make is printmaking, for those of you who don't know, and the kind of printmaking we do is spot color printmaking, as opposed to CMYK, cyan, yellow, magenta, and black, or key, K for key, which is the key line that goes over. What we do is we mix every single color one at a time and lay it down one at a time. So it's a very arduous, like handmade thing, very hard to go to scale and do a big volume, but what it produces is a very beautiful thing. And what you produce it on are very beautiful machines. So we make, I don't know, we just use an old school machine to make old school style printmaking, using handmade papers with people in the community that we really love, and we work with graphic designers from all over the world to do that. And we produce beautiful things when we do that, right? I mean, you can't tell me you just don't want to like touch the deboss in that. It's just, I don't know, there's just something about the processes that we do that make art come to life in such a unique way. And in our near 10 years, we've done quite a lot of work now. So spot color printing means that we make everything by hand, every single color. So if you look at something like this by Adam Grayson, one of our locals, that's on wood paper, but that's 2 colors. 2 colors on a wood paper. Every one of those colors are mixed by hand. And then every screen was made individually. Then that color was printed. Then the next color was printed. It's just a lot of steps. Right? An average job's going to have like 15 steps to it, and it's going to go through maybe 20 different people's hands in our shop. So in our 10 years, I mean, we're creeping up on almost 20,000 jobs all made by hand with an average of 2.6 colors per job when you average it out. So that's a whole lot of handmade work, and it's taken a lot of amazing people on our staff to try to bring something like that handmade to scale, to make what we do available to graphic designers and artists around the world. And we get to work with really amazing clients all over. which is super awesome. Some in our backyard, some all over the country, some all over the world. And then I got a little technical glitch here on my thing, but this was a little timeline of kind of where I came from, and I don't know where those images are, but just imagine on the 1993 side, me in my bedroom as a little 12-year-old, well, 1993, 13-year-old, building computers and making bulletin boards, right? And no one's old enough to be, who's old enough to have used a bulletin board system? Yeah. So could someone give me the sound of you connecting to another computer? Anyone want to try it? Yeah, it's pretty close, yeah. So back before you would get on Prodigy or AOL or anything like that, you would literally find a bulletin board in a coffee shop with like a tear-off and a phone number and be like, oh, this is a computer I can call with my computer. And if you were in Cape Coral, Florida in 1993 and you would have pulled one of those off, you might have called my computer. And then eventually I was able to save enough money through checks that people would mail me to be able to use this service that I got a second modem. Now, 2 people could be on my computer at the exact same time, right? It was just a neat little weird thing that I did as a nerdy kid. And then I rolled that into, obviously, that image right there is when I had a toy business and worked my way through undergrad selling toys online. And it was awesome. I sold vintage Star Wars toys. I actually had the first wholesale account for lightsabers for Phantom Menace. I know this is so weird, but somehow 6 months before Walmart got the lightsabers for Phantom Menace, I was able to order them. So for about 6 months, I was selling $2 lightsabers for about $90 each on eBay as fast as I could print them. So college was easy and awesome, and it felt like it was free. And so I really lucked out on that. And then I moved to Orlando to go to grad school. And into Winter Park, and I met somebody, a guy named David McKenna, and he's like, I got this band, and I want to make a record label around them, and I could use some help. And I was like, that's cool, man, let's do this thing, you know? And so I came on board and I partnered with him to make Bonded Records. And for my part, given my history, building bulletin boards, doing all kinds of online communication, I was doing my master's on online communication. I ran kind of the ops online, you know, the guy in the van. And basically that's just meant like building MySpace pages and communicating, promoting bands. And that was something, being nimble as a small company, large companies are, you know, they're slow to move. So that's very attractive to the institution of wherever you are. If you're nimble, you know, the larger companies are slow to get into things. So that made us attractive, and Bonded Records became attracted to Universal. And we were able to sell, you know, a couple bands to Universal and get funding and distribution through them. And then I sold the record label, and I got into printing. So along the way, we had a band here, right? And a lot of the serendipitous things that happen to us have to do with graphic designers. I feel like everyone that's changed our life, I mean, a great majority of them have been, right? Does this have a laser on it? Oh, yeah. So this is the first album we released on Bonded Records, and that designer's name is Danny Jones. If you're old school enough in Orlando to know Danny Jones, and you are so last year, he is amazing, and we're working with him to do Between the Trees stuff, and he comes back later, right? Van Marino, who I managed, Baron Von Bear, who I managed. Is anyone old enough to remember either of those bands? Yeah. This is Anna Bond, and that's Anna Bond of Rifle Paper Company, who was doing the art for these bands. So, you know, funny story with Ban Marino, you know, if it wasn't for Ban Marino, I wouldn't be in printing, right? Which is just an amazing thing. I never set out to be a printmaker. There's nothing serendipitous about where I am, but rather all the things that happen along the way and all the yeses that you do, right? So the band, Ban Marino, Nathan Bond, the singer, was just hounding me to get more tour posters online, or on a tour they're at. Our vendor shut their website down. I kept calling them until they answered, you know, and they're just like, man, we're just not doing it anymore. And I was like, all right, well, I could use these dang posters and you're cheapest in town. How do I get them? He's like, I don't know, man. So I drove up, you know, the 8-hour, I don't know how many hours, in my Mini Cooper to Panama City where they were located, and I just bought their website from them for $5,000. So I had now 2,000 touring indie bands, and I moved the entire company, a company big enough to fit in my Mini Cooper back. And that's what I was kind of left with. That was mine. I sold the record label, and now I was left with this digital printing company. And I needed someone to run it, right? So Baron von Bear has a Joey Bordenga, who is the lead singer in that. And I was like, Joey, you need a flexible job, you're touring, do you want a job? I don't know, it might be 10 hours a week, I have no idea. He's like, all right, cool. So this is Joey. And we, that's about everything I got with the company. Actually, I had to buy that computer. And this is my view, this is how close Joey and I are. We rented a copy room in a casting agency, Mullen Casting. Here in town, and like every day I would come to work and the lobby would be filled with 200 people that look a lot alike, right? And you work your way through there, and then we just occupied their copy room and we just turned on the website and started taking orders from DIY bands. Never set out to do any of this stuff, right? And now I've sold the record label, but yet I'm still working with bands. And so inside of a month, the company had paid back its $5,000. Like, oh, that was a pretty cool thing. I'm just going to sit here and manage bands, you know? And eventually we just started growing. Oh my God, did we start growing? So we needed to move into my garage. So we remodeled the garage. Now Joey and I are about this far apart. And there we are, just printing stuff for bands. And then we met a designer, right? So this is one of those really, like this is a huge milestone on par with meeting like a Danny Jones. Somebody says, you know, to me, this guy, Austin Petito, who's an acquaintance at a time, he's a garage printer. You know, and I don't know what that means. He's a screen printer. I didn't know what that means. He's got some clients. He's moving town. I know what that means, you know, like, all right, cool, let's talk. And so I was like, Austin, man, I would love to, you know, get your clients. I'd love to buy your business and roll it into this. I think whatever you do sounds like something bands would want. Let's do a deal. He's like, well, I'm leaving in 2 weeks. What I do is screen printing. It's really hard to learn, but I'll move in with you guys for 2 weeks and move my equipment in and show you how to do it. And we're like, all right, let's do it. And so we rented the house next door. This is building out the dark room in the garage, and we put his t-shirt wheel in the living room. We put our laser printer in the living room. We had the master bedroom as our office. I built a bunk bed above the desk for Austin for 2 weeks. I don't know why I did that. We had shipping in the back bedroom. We had a break room that was carved out like an outside patio that we use as the break room where we just go smoke cigars. And right next to that was a kitchen where we mixed our inks. All right, so we didn't mix our inks in the kitchen because we're Mama Sauce. That was not the name of our company. The company that I bought was called PCX Media, Panama City Extreme, right? But what did I know about branding? What did I know about any of this stuff? Nothing. But who I did know was an Austin Petito, and what he did was graphic design. And the very first thing he did was he said, we are not going with that logo. That's got to go, right? So I know we only got 2 weeks, but I'm going to spend a little time making you a new logo, right? Just tonight. So he just freshened it up for us, and it's like, bam, you meet this designer, right? He uses his influence on you, and he teaches you something in that moment of what's important, right? And we said yes, you know? It'd be easy to say, like, man, we only got 2 weeks, and I got to learn this whole new craft. But it's like, no, okay, you know, respect the man, and this is what he wants to do, so let's do it. Man, and when I can't overstate how critical that is in the success of our company over time. Who do we work with now? No one but graphic designers. Who did we work with then? Touring, dirt broke, awesome DIY bands that wanted to pay 25 cents per poster, right? So all of a sudden, you know, you meet this thing, you say yes to it, and the whole course of our history starts to shift. Opportunity in front of us changes, right? So now, I got a couple characters that I've met along the way. You know, a Joey Bordenga, an Austin Petito, a Nick Sambrato. That's a lot of vowels ending names. So you got 3 Italian-American guys, by chance, you know, living in a house together, learning a craft, eating Italian food that my mom would just, she still shows up and cooks, right? But she would show up then especially and just cook for 3 days and fill my freezer with frozen Italian food. And so there we were, 3 Italian-American guys eating Italian food, making things with hands, mixing inks in kitchens, right? And our 2 weeks runs out. And we find ourselves on the break room. This is the view from the break room, the patio, looking in. That's Austin, like, you know, putting together an imposition on a screen print. Last night, Austin's leaving tomorrow. It gets really, really romantic, you know, and so if you're looking through that, sliding glass door, you see that view. But if you look to your left while you're sitting out there, you see a windowsill that goes into the kitchen. And on that windowsill was a cobalt blue bowl, sat there like a pie would be sitting in like a 50s cartoon, you know, where, you know, just like float over to it, you know, like a, it was just sitting there like a looming ink mixing mistake that I had made. And I don't know, it was just something about it. And just saying our goodbyes with Austin, I was like, man, if you ever want to come back, you know, like this thing, mixing inks by hand, printing things, beautiful process, we'll do it, man. We'll do it. And we'll call it Mama Sauce. It was just like that moment, right? So Austin leaves. He moves into a print shop in Portland, spends a couple months, accomplishes what he wants to accomplish. And then he calls me and he's like, you know what? Let's do it. I was like, all right, let's do it. So we shut down PCX Media, named it Mama Sauce, got a storefront on Fairbanks, hung meat in the window. And yes, people did show up asking for meat and sauce. And we're like, get out of here, that's not what we do. You don't understand branding. We know that now. Joey grew a mustache, which was pretty awesome. And then there's just something about that, right? Now here we are, we're trying to do something, and we got trusted because we trusted a designer, because we were doing something. We got our first call for our first high-profile thing ever, right? Like, we went from, you know, clicking a button, spitting out a laser sheet, and sending it off to bands for 25 cents a poster to Maven Creative calling us and saying, you guys, you're doing this thing that's really awesome. You have this awesome space. We have this basketball player that wants this really expensive business card. I don't know if you know how hard this was, you know, for us to accomplish, right? But Maven Creative, you gave us our first shot at doing something that was like at another level, right? This is a screen printed business card. This is before we did letterpress. And the cut in it was something that had to be laser cut. There was a guy in town that I had met just recently that had a laser cutting machine. His name was Jason Gregory. He owns a shop called Maker, right? And I was like, bro, will you do this? He's like, all right. You know, I don't think it's never been his purview now, but back then, you're young and scrappy. You know, he laser cut all of our cards for us, right? You have Maven Creative, you have Mama Sauce, you know, you have Maker coming together, making this little thing we're doing in Orlando. And it was our first like crack at things, and it was like good fodder to put out in the universe and say we could do something. It's our first real showpiece, right? And then our next showpiece, one night, now we're on Fairbanks, we share a driveway, it's us and Rifle in the same space, Rifle Paper and us. And Anna's like, Anna Bond calls and she walks over and she's like, hey, Martha Stewart just like wants to put up a feature. I need to overnight stuff of my stuff like tomorrow, you know, like can you do this, right? Oh, yes, I can, let's do it. Are we getting credit? All right, cool, yes, let's do it. And so, I mean, you know, this is like a full coverage screen print, nothing we've ever done. You know, we stayed up all night, we did it. We said yes to this moment that was presented to us. And it was a big deal for us. It's still a big deal for us. It's a milestone, it's this thing, right? We're published, you know, Anna's published. Martha Stewart, weddings, that's a whole new direction we're going in, right? It was this cool moment. And it wouldn't have been possible if our friend Danny Jones from Do You Are So last year told me, well, as soon as we said we're doing Mama Sauce, and that was the thing we're doing, he showed up like 3 days later and he gave us like an AI file of 20 different logos and marks. He was just so, he's like, here, have this is great. Like, I just wanted to give this to you, you're doing something amazing, this is cool. Also, you saw the splash page we put up, PCX Media is now Mama Sauce. He's like, you guys gotta take that down, right? And put up a blog. And this is May 14th, 2009. I love lasers. And so we did that. And these things that I just told you, we put on that blog and people started talking. You know, we took the advice from people and did it. And that's a big part of it was, you know, saying yes to the right opportunities, working for them, telling our story, and honestly being in the right place at the right time. So, right place, right time. I'm on tour. With the band, with Band Marino. Yeah, with Band Marino. And Joey's back at the office, and he calls me, he's like, hey, that paper cutter that came with the original shop we bought, you know, the one that was small enough to fit on the passenger seat of your Mini Cooper, that finally broke for the last time. And so we're gonna need another one. I was like, we might as well get a real paper cutter. I have no idea what that is, but I'm sure there's a print shop going out of business somewhere. I'm in Atlanta on tour. There's gotta be a real print shop here. And they all seem to be going out of business. So I hopped on Craigslist, found one. We did our load in with the band, and I was like, all right guys, I gotta just take the MARTA down 2 stops. I'm gonna go check this thing out. I went to this building. I passed it just not that long ago. I stopped and I was like, yeah, that's that old shop where that changed our life. And I popped in over there, and there was this 87-year-old man retiring, and he had this 1950s paper cutter. Awesome, I'll have it. And then I said, what is that next to it? This amazing, beautiful machine, you know, vacillating rods moving in and out of it, just gorgeous. And he said, that's a letterpress. And on the night I told you about with Austin in the break room, he told me about a letterpress. And this was the Trio days. You didn't Google things, so I had just this imagination of what it was, right? And then when I saw it in real life, I said, yes, of course it is. That is as romantic as I pictured it to be. I was like, I'll have that too. So I went back to the venue, told the band I gotta go see about a press. You guys can finish this up on your own. I rented a Penske truck. I drove it down right to Fairbanks Avenue, came in, didn't tell a word to the guys. They just saw us come back with a paper cutter, opened up the door. Joey looked in, Austin looked in. Joey's like, what is that? Austin goes, that's a letterpress. And he's like, yes, it is. And so we unloaded it. We put a picture on our blog, and the very first guy to respond to that was a guy named Chris Hevener. He has a company called Vidiri Chocolate Company now that's in Raleigh, North Carolina. But at the time, he was running a magazine, a literary magazine, and he wanted letterpress business cards. So the very first guy, he was in Orlando at the time, responded to a blog post, gave us our first crack at a job. I had no idea how to even price it, right? But I went online, I found people published prices, that's what I charged him, which seemed pretty expensive at the time, right? And it's about what we would charge now, looking back on it, but you know, we spent, I don't know, 36 hours trying to print this job. That would take us, you know, an hour and a half or 2 now, right? So, you know, we did it. The craziest thing that we did, though, was that Chris has a brother. His name is Chase. He owns a company called Fiction. What do they do? Videos, right? And if you look back at this, actually, no, we're right there. In summer of 2009, May 18th, 2009, I don't know if you guys know internet taxonomy and history so much, but back then what was really, really cool and going on was like the artisan movement, right, which we're part of, and makers, right? But then also DSLR cameras, Vimeo, staff pics. What are people doing with the DSLR cameras? This right moment in time, right? And Chase bought one of those, and he's like, I want to test this camera, right? Because, you know, that's a thing that's going on, and he really wanted to push it and see what it could do. And so he asked, can I film that job? Sure, yes. Saying yes to filming our first job ever, right? Which looks a lot like this. There's that beautiful press I told you about. My God, it's gorgeous. And then there's me. I got the black lung, Pop. Yeah, it was kind of a stupid thing, right? To say yes to a job you didn't know how to do, to charge an industry rate for it, to say yes, you could film me, you know, but yet also so fortuitous, because the confluence of all those things, that moment when that went into the universe, that video, Vimeo, staff pic, this blog, that blog, picked it up, thing just went everywhere. And I remember our friendship, Chase and I's friendship, was largely forged because before that it was a few years of feuding. I don't know why. Largely forged like on a text message, like, oh my God, did you see the place right? It was just started just climbing. It was this exciting moment, right? And then because of that, so many people had seen this video. That machine looks like it knows what it's doing. It comes with all these years that just say, yeah, this thing can do it. People started calling a lot, and we started saying yes to everything. Did we know what we're doing? Absolutely not. Not at all. And you might be sitting in this room being like, hey, you know, we did a job with you in like 2009, 2010. It was terrible. Yeah, we didn't know what we were doing. I'm so sorry. Talk to me after. I'll make it up to you. So, yeah, it was just, I don't know, this moment, right? Right place, right time, right people, right attitude, right? We said yes to things that we didn't know how to do. And so we instantly had this need that outgrew this little space on Fairbanks that we're in. So we went and found a warehouse on Alden. Rest in peace, I just passed it. It's not there anymore. It's going to be condos. And so we moved into that, and it was 2,500 square feet under AC, 2,500 not under AC. But at that moment, on that block, and I don't know if you've been on Alden Road when it was a place in a center of makers, right? I don't know if you knew someone who was. We just happened to find the right place because we couldn't have afforded the space that we needed at the time. And we needed the space because I started getting a letterpress habit and started buying them. And we started getting opportunities, and I needed a home. And figuring it out was really hard with no help. So that was a lot of cutting our teeth. And it wasn't for, like I said, the right people, the right place, the right time. Jane, who owned that block, and I would defend her to the day I die. Some people were like, oh, another block goes to condos or whatever. But she did her part, right? Her father built that block. And then when she took over it for years and years and years, I can't tell you how many people, artisans and makers, owed her money, would get behind us even, or if we needed extra help. She made it a haven for people to be able to do things. And so many people that came out of that block that were given that ability. That's a place and a time and a moment and a person that a lot of us wouldn't be here if it wasn't for her, right? And so when she gets ill and decides to move that on and she can't carry that weight anymore, so be it. You know, it becomes condos, right? Because there is no other way to make that spot work the way we were doing it and the rate she was charging. So right place, right time, Orlando, these people, it's all just a fortuitous thing. And it was really, really hard to learn that. Then also, remember, we still had this other thing we were doing, full color, dirt cheap printing for bands. And so we're, you know, managing this house that had two different, I mean, it's under the same brand, but two brand promises that were starkly different, right? PCX Media's Legacy, which was cheap stuff. Mama Sauce, which is going in the direction of handmade and artisan, right? High end, you pay for the whole experience. And doing both those things yielded all kinds of terrible things. One of which was like, you know, this 25-cent poster, you know, like they expected it to be something it couldn't be because it was Mama Sauce, right? And all these headaches. So what we did is we decided to do away with the thing that we didn't love, right? We got rid of the laser printing. And the second we did that, things really, really started to take shape for us, right? When we focused on the thing that really lit us up. When we did away with the things that were a distraction and painful, right? Didn't make what we were setting out to do easy, but it definitely made it easier, right? And people started kind of showing up at our door, right? Like we have this largely Orlando base that's building us, this place and time, all you wonderful people. And then all of a sudden people around the country started taking notice. And when they were in Orlando for this reason or that, they started stopping by. Like French Paper Company, if you don't know them, amazing and a very powerful brand in what we want to do in graphic design, right? Aaron Draplin, if you don't know him, just an amazing figure in what we do and produce. And if it wasn't for, you know, guys like these people coming in and saying like, yes, to us, we wouldn't be here today, right? And so it went and our community grew. So it's people, right? You got to start with the people that are in reach. You got to start with the people that you can make these magical moments with. And you got to be grateful for it as well. So, you know, Maven took a risk on us, helped propel us, you know, by proximity and relationship. Rifle is a beautiful thing in our world, right? And then we did that video thing, and that was really exciting with Chase in fiction, right? And at the time I told you it was hard. I moved into the shop. I didn't have any money. Everything went back in the shop. You know, it was literally blood, sweat, and tears. And then, you know, I found a safe space, you know, over at Fiction. And we built this relationship, and it couldn't be more serendipitous than this. That a person that at one time you thought was, you know, your enemy, you're not sure if they're your frenemy, and then you do this thing that creates this moment together, and all of a sudden it's on the other side of it. And then he offered me a safe space, right? I'm like, dude, I can't be in this. I live here, I sleep here, but I work here all day. I'm in debt. I just can't be here anymore. I'm at the point now, though, all I need to do is the internet communication stuff right now. And he's like, dude, just take a desk at our spot and get out of there for a little while, you know? All right, cool. So I started working, and this is another great thing because I always moved close to wherever Mama Sauce moved. We moved 6 times in our first 2 years, and I would always be with it, right? You know, like right there where I could walk to it. And eventually that was really important because in those broke years, I had to sell my car right? And now we moved and Alden, and I'm walking a mile to work and walking a mile back. And this is pretty close to where my last stop was. And I couldn't afford to move, so I was like, oh, it's a shorter walk too, you know? Awesome. And then that grows into a relationship. This moment turned into something that out of nowhere just became a job, right? And then I started working at this place. And you know, started doing exciting things in video and started doing exciting things in the brand. And then eventually the relationship made sense that, again, remember, we're still struggling through things, doing all right, but struggling through things, to grow and scale a manufacturer. And that's what we are. We print, but printing is manufacturing. It requires capital, requires support, requires business plans, right? Requires this knowledge that I don't have. Yeah, like people are like, oh, yeah, I did my master's at Rollins. Like, oh, you got an MBA? No, I didn't. It's just in digital communication. Like, I don't know anything about business. That's why we're struggling so hard. And so that relationship turned into a partnership, where I was, you know, given these things that would eventually support us to become what we could be, what our potential was, right? Scrappy, potential. That's all we ever were. But it does take this institutional knowledge in business, you know, in all kinds of different areas that, I mean, wouldn't have happened if we didn't become partners with fiction. So you could see that story starts somewhere, and all these moments add up. And I would say, I mean, one of the more serendipitous things in our world is that, you know, just by chance finding somebody. It's so hard to find someone who believes in you, right? I mean, mom, you know, that's great and awesome. But then in the universe, if you have a startup, if you're trying to do anything to really get someone to infuse and put money where their mouth is, that's a hard thing to do, right? And so it does feel like magic when it actually happens. And I do believe it is a little bit of magic. So we were able to afford to move into our dream space, right? And start really taking off from there. So now we're outside of College Park, right on 441 in Princeton. I think we're safe from condos for the time being, but they're not renewing our lease coming up, so I'm not sure. We'll see. I feel like every single person in our world that works with us, we're at 20 people right now, and it feels like serendipity every time you meet somebody, right? It can feel that way. If you really turn and invest in people, in a moment, you get in there and you meet them in a room, whatever it is, that moment can be as serendipitous as you want it to be. And I feel so lucky with our employees. You know, if you take a picture today, it's different than this. Some people are here that were with us before and not. We need to get a new staff photo, but people change in and out, and it does that. But the point is, like, to have the dream team, right, is just about being there in that moment with them and doing your best for them. And should people move on or not, like, you know, it's just about that moment. So I feel like we have really great relationships with all these people that have come, stayed, some come and gone, right? Our head screen printer has been with us almost 7 years. I met him at our first event we ever did, which happened to be in Savannah, right? And it was just a chance meeting. And then next thing you know, he's like, I want to come down. And he just interned us for a year. He wouldn't leave. So we gave him a job, you know? And he's amazing. He's the best screen printer in the world now, right? Because we met somewhere. He saw a tweet that we sent while we're on the highway heading to Savannah. He's like, I'm on the highway heading to Savannah. Can I meet you guys? Right? Here we are today. Tim Stiles, the best screen printer in the world. Joey still has a really badass mustache, and he runs the place, you know? Really amazing, really amazing. So one thing for us that, to our credit, have been like just really awesome things is that we were given a legacy, right? We had this moment in time that if you survive the pop of any bubble, right? For us, I think we survived the burst of the artisan bubble, right? But to be in there and to come out of it and have anything to gain from it, whether you have a company or a moment where you gain from that moment, that can feel quite serendipitous, quite fortuitous, right? And there we were part of the artisan bubble, and we're on the other side. And we gained from a legacy, right? 450 years of letterpress printing, 2,000 years of screen printing. We just, you know, we're just here, just stewarding it, doing our best to wield it, right? But then also, we're in Orlando, and we wouldn't have done it without this community. I don't think we would have done it if we were in Brooklyn or Austin or Portland or anywhere else, right? Those are great communities, but the legacy and the opportunity that we have to build here is unlike any other, right? Because there are big brands that largely own the dominant meme that is creativity in Orlando. And they're wonderful and awesome. I mean, you know, who doesn't love Disney? They do such a great job that we need to rise together. And I feel like this collection of characters, all of you, everyone, when we come together and be part of each other's stories, we grow that, right? From Danny Jones and Yazlie to Maven and Fiction and Rifle, all of us together, and all of a sudden Drapple and Facebook, all these other people we work with all over the country. But it starts here. And Orlando's a great place to build a legacy. It really is. And it's amazing, like, you know, I was at the National Stationery Show in New York, and someone's like, you know, I left Orlando a couple years ago. It's like, now I'm like, why did I leave Orlando? Like, and they're in paper. They're like, all these amazing things are happening in paper and printing in Orlando. What's going on, right? We had this moment, and we're still having it. And I think we're in a great place, just a really great place to create more of that. It's that I think Orlando's in its serendipitous moment right now, and it's all because of community, right? Serendipity really relies on community. It relies on saying yes. It relies on the work. And so I'm happy to be part of this community. And thank you guys so much for listening to me tonight and or today. Yes, sir.
What was the one like belief that got you out of bed during your hardest months days?
When I was growing up, I was never told what I need to do, right? Who you need to be or anything else like that. I was just always told that, you know, you can do anything you want. All things are possible, you know. You're as smart as anybody, as good as anybody, you know. And I don't know, I guess I was raised with a level of optimism where never did it really feel like, even in the worst times, there'd be moments where you're like, oh my God, I can't do this anymore. But then like that'd pass because I'd just be like, you know, invest in that moment. I don't know, it's just a level of optimism that was bred into me, I guess, yeah. And really taking joy in the work in front of you. Like if you're living in the future, you know, thinking about that bill that's due, thinking about this, thinking about that, you're not living in that moment and that task you're doing, and you're robbed of all that joy. And for some reason, somehow, that's something I kind of learned, even through that's another inherited legacy. Like I knew young, like living in the past and living in the future did a lot of damage to that person in my family. I'm like, whatever's right here, man, I'm into this. You know what I mean?
Where do you see yourself in Mama Sauce in 10 years?
It's a great question, right? I mean, there's being concerned with perpetuity is like one of my chief things, like, you know, that I think about. Like, how do we survive the next whatever bubble it is? How do we continue to create opportunity or sustainability? And I'd be lying to you if I said that I believe that if we just stayed the course that we're on right now, we'd be fine, right? Already seeing shops very similar ours, like, you know, going the wayside or struggling, and I'm not even saying we don't struggle. So expanding our brand, relying less on manufacturing. The biggest, I'm not saying go away from manufacturing entirely, right? Your core capacity, the thing you do is the engine that drives the entire company. So a 180 pivot, then all of a sudden you can't pay the bills, right? So diversifying and trying to rely on our brand to create things and experiences for people that are in our audience that are, they'll create revenue that allow us to breathe a little easier. Because we, 98% rely on custom printing right now, right? And I want to grow that 2%, into experiences, brand stuff, all that other stuff. So, yeah, I'm sorry if I'm being a little vague about what all that stuff is, but I don't want to put something in the universe and it doesn't happen. But we've got plans. We got plans.
Yeah. I was just going to ask you, is there a dream project or dream client that you guys work on and haven't yet?
It's a great question. Jessica Hish is quite elusive. We've done one collaborative thing with her, but yet never really printed any of like the things that she does. But we did do a benefit thing with her in collaboration. As a designer goes, like she's still like, I'm gonna get you, you know. Any largely digital experience brand is like in that. So I would say a dream bucket. If you are somebody that is fully, which I believe in, like bring it on, you know, bring on the robots, bring it all on. It only makes the experience that we offer that much more valuable, right? So, you know, Facebook has the analog lab. It's a mama sauce inside of Facebook available to their people, right? That's necessary. We work a lot with Adobe, right? We work, you know, those kind of brands, IBM. Anyone that has a largely digital experience is on that must-have list for me. Because, and especially on experiential side, when I say experiential, going out and doing live printing with their team, anything like that, it never ceases to blow my mind if we do an event and somebody like pushes through a screen and then opens it up and like, whoa, you know, like it's, I don't know, it's just something about it. So anyone, you know, there's that thing that a lot of us do all day, right? Typing on a keyboard and stuff. And I don't know, I love offering an experience that gets you away from that, you know, and reminds you of other things, yeah.
What advice would you have for a lot of the young startups and people here that are like, I love this city, I love this community, but I'm having a hard time getting people outside of the city to, and I know for me to exist the way I want to, that needs to happen. So. Yeah.
Yeah, so in fact, my first Creative Morning talk was like on money, right? And the talk was like attracting money to the community, right? And I would say for us, if I ran a report right now, my guess would be that the dollars that come into our door from Orlando, 2%, right? From Florida, you know, 6%. You know, I'm taking a guess, but it's a pretty educated guess, but I could, you know, run that and tell you. But so to your point, to operate the way we want to operate, it requires money from elsewhere. But you have to start with where your community is. And that's why I structured this talk this way, right? It's, you know, these relationships in your community. Like, I'm not like, do not confuse me. I said, you know, before, like a house divided sets, you know, will not stand. And I'll say another thing from the Bible. Don't make any assumptions on where I am. I believe in magic. But you know, there's this thing. I remember there was, I was a creative director at this thing called Status years ago. If anyone ever remember Status? Yeah. And there's this guy that ran it named John Tyson. And I remember this talk that he gave. It's something, I couldn't tell you what the Bible verse is, right? But it struck me because he's talking about spreading what he's spreading, the gospel, right? And he's like, you start in, you know, from whatever the cities were, Samaria to blah, 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 to blah, blah, blah. And then he broke it down to the importance of that and how it's a community thing. And then he used that to leverage to say why he was moving to New York, you know, like, because that has a lot more ripple effect and influence. And I was like, man, really struck by that. So I really have structured a lot of what we do on that, right? The proximity, the relationship. Here in the city, there's just so much to gain, and there's strength in numbers, you know? So just creating that community, there's a lot that comes from that. You have to start where your community is and scale it. And aside from that, the world is available to you, and you are available to the world. So there's that where you build with each other, but then what you put into the universe, everything has to be really on point, and you will be embraced. Because all eyes are on you. If you're a designer and you work in the digital sphere and you have a dribble, you're going to get checked out by scouts in Toronto, in New York, in Austin, in Portland, in San Francisco, in LA. They'll be watching you, right? The eyes are just as available to you as they are to anyone else. So do your best work, right? For us, breaking the cycle of what we didn't want to do had a lot to do with what we put out in the universe, right? We did our first, our second business card, and it was like, on a technical level, just terrible, hard, and really hard on our press. And I won't go into the nerdiness of it. But when we put that into the universe, all of a sudden, since we did that, we've done thousands of orders where people, you know, maybe 1,000, I don't want to exaggerate, of people being like, I want that style. And we're like, oh my God, that was such a stretch for us. And now everyone wants to do that. So what you put out has a big effect. And that was even before we had this big footprint, you know? It went out into the universe, and no one, at a certain point, it traces back to us because our name was on it, right? But it was out of our control. And we also really only showed, so we learned, like, show the work that you want to be known for, you know? And so there was for a long time, a lot of stuff that we're like, no, we're not going to show that, you know? And it's really amazing that you get back what you put out there as well. And just keep investing in doing your craft or whatever you do better and better and better, and show it and show it and show it. And in whatever way you want to do that, yeah.
Together to 20, is there anything that stands out to you from kind of maintaining a healthy company culture like within Mama Sauce?
Still learning. Yeah, it gets harder. You know, a friend of mine who has a really big shop of like 100 people, basically doing what we do. There's no bigger shop. He told me, he's like, man, it's hardest between 10 and 20, HR-wise, you know, and which involves culture and everything else. And that's why I can't wait to get to 21, you know, like maybe it'll get easier. That's really hard because at a certain point, when you're small and scrappy, you can take risk, and you do take risk, and you get to be creative and have fun. It's really exciting and taxing at the same time, and also attractive because those things that you take risk on, if they're successful, people come to you. Now, to scale to do that requires structure and people and support. So when you meet creative with the institution and economics and a business, you can't do that without capital. You just can't. That's why, like, the culture wars in San Francisco, they're just throwing money at culture, right? You know, our chef's got Michelin stars, you know? Like, you know, somebody at a tech company that was in a battle with another, you know, with another company that had a kind of offering we had, talked to us loosely about, like, okay, what if we had you in our shop, you know, for our designers? Like, it's just your brand, you know, whatever. Like, the things they do to create the culture, it requires a lot of money. So at our level, I can't compete with that. So we do find that, you know, people have to come and they have to go, right? But there is a value, I think, that I try to focus, like, the value that we can give. Flexibility, right? Being as in touch with, you know, with the people as you possibly can. I try to get lunch with everyone I can, whenever I can, like, just this interconnectedness. I don't know, I'm still learning it, man. But the best I can do is describe that tension. Eventually, if the company has to scale, a lot of that creative and excitement stuff has to change in order for it to be healthy. If I could wave a magic wand and say, like, no, we're still gonna be scrappy and fun and cool, you know, I would, but it's not the truth. The economic system is vicious. Yeah. All right, that was the last one.
Well, again, one more time, if you guys wouldn't mind. Thank you.